You might have to turn your camera on. I don't know.
Well, Chris just went live. Welcome down to the bleachers, guys. This is William Yanish. We've got my co-host Chris, the Brain Ransom. I don't know. You can't see Daniel Kelly. I think he just dropped out. He's our special guest tonight, otherwise known as Candy. There he is again. What are you up to, Daniel?
Hey guys! Thank you for having me on the show tonight. You can hear me, but you can't see me.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure.
The device restarted a front camera. Something happened there. I'm in Key West, Florida, so it's kind of anyone's guess down here. The internet is like two people taking like two styrofoam cups with a string in between, and that's what the high-speed internet's like down here. So it's a little unpredictable.
Yeah. I'm in Colorado, and it's definitely not great at all, man. But hey, like I said, you're our special guest tonight, and tell us a little bit more about yourself, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me at least okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, this, I grew up, for those that don't know me, I grew up with a tremendous passion for football, for the team, the Washington Redskins. Never got big enough to play, despite eating a lot of large pizzas and a lot of weight gainer 2200 in my orange juice. And I played 1 year of high school football and was so bad at it, I was the only kid on my team not to have enough playing time to earn a letter jacket. From there, my parents at my 17th birthday gave me a book, Tony Rosano's, you might remember, William, being a 49ers guy. For a Secrets of the NFL Scout. I was love at first sight. I wanted to be an NFL scout. 7 years later, I got that opportunity with the New York Jets to work in pro scouting in the department there for 4 years. And it was an amazing 4 years. And starting back in about 2021, I jumped, I guess, both feet, both arms, everything, jumped back into the evaluation pool. And I've been doing it ever since. And I spend about 17 to 20 hours a day grinding film, writing reports, 6 to 7 days a week. And here we are.
Nice, man. Nice. Well,
yeah, that's the Cliff Notes.
yeah. The Cliff Notes on Daniel Candy Kelly.
But that's right. That's right. And for those of you that don't know, William and I, we worked together for about a year, a little bit over a year, right? On my NFL draft website, firstroundmock.com. He's got a lot of articles over there, a lot of good stuff. And we had a great time working together for that year. So a little backdrop. We have some history together, William.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're definitely my mentor, man. And I definitely took off, in that little over a year and a half, we got about 3.5 years worth of evaluations for 2.5. And like I tell you, man, it was a lot of fun. And man, I'm glad you're here tonight. But, Absolutely. We're not here to talk about ourselves. So
No, not at all. Let's
talk about some quarterbacks, man.
Wow.
The fire. We're not here to talk about offensive linemen tonight or anything like that, but we want to start out on top, man. Tell us who QB1 is in Daniel Kelly book and why you like him.
Absolutely. QB1 in the 2025 NFL draft for me is Cam Ward of the University of Miami. I could go on and on for quite a while on the show here, but the things that really that I love about Cam. Now, I'm not a Cam come lately guy. Like some people out there. He arrived in Miami and all of a sudden, he was the talk of the town. I've maintained a documented first-round grade on Cam Ward now for 3 years in a row, 3 seasons of game film dating all the way back to Washington State when he was coming out of Incarnate Word in the FCS there. And to me, he's just somebody. The thing that strikes me the most about him is his ability to successfully and quickly acclimate to new environments. We saw it at Washington State. The 2 years he was there, he reminded me of Jalen Hurts. We saw him make the jump to Miami. Boom. He reminded me of this last season of Patrick Mahomes, if I dare say it. The things that set him apart in my mind is his aggression level and his confidence level are off the charts. He has an elite pocket navigation, and he drives the offense downfield very aggressively. He keeps the offense leaning forward, and he's a student of the game. He's a guy that has high-level communication skills. I take a lot of heat out there for, why don't you watch the all-22 tape? Well, there's a number of reasons, but one of the things I like is that, the intel I can glean from these networks are spending millions upon millions of dollars for research and stuff, and it's kind of cool to kind of hear some of the insights they have. Talking about, how high level communication skills Cam Ward had, how his teammates responded to him, how he was always asking his teammates what they thought, soliciting feedback and things. And he just brings a team together so quickly. I think I read something, not too long ago, a couple months ago, that said that, Cam Ward had already pretty much knew Tennessee's offense, the Titans. And that's just his nature. He's very well prepared. But, like I said, I could go on and on about that guy. I just, I love a lot of things about him. And it was fun watching him down in Miami. I can go on further if you guys want me to, but and get more into the nuts and bolts and the meat and potatoes of, what he looked like on the film. But that's just kind of a 30,000-foot view, without doing too much of the talking here. I really, really like him.
Yes, sir. He was definitely an evaluation that I enjoyed from the start. And I always had a high round. I wasn't quite as high as you, but second round to start when he was at Washington State, and going over some of that in Incarnate Word. But we've seen a couple quarterbacks come out of Incarnate Word, and Lindsey Scott almost made the jump, but I think he's over in the UFL now. I'm not sure on that. Chris, you're welcome to jump in here anytime.
Yeah, I expect the top four to be Tennessee Titans, Cam Ward, Cleveland Browns, Travis Hunter, New York Giants, Abdul Carter, and New England Patriots, Will Campbell. I think that's probably going to be the top four tomorrow night. And what's surprising is there wasn't an image of those top four on Google today, so I had William cook something up. You'll get the thumbnail for that after this show, but, it's funny. We're on the subject of quarterbacks. While I was on I was at lunch getting Red Lobster yesterday, and my mom brings up the fact that the Steelers should draft Shedeur Sanders. I'm like, no, you do not want Shedeur Sanders on the Steelers. Believe me, you're going to have a bad time if Shadeur's on the Steelers. It's a very awkward conversation to have over lunch, but that did take place yesterday.
Hey, man, if you can talk football with your mom.
That's pretty cool, Chris.
I
appreciate the endorsement.
My mom's still on the asking questions phase, but she's definitely learning, and sitting here talking and listening to me do all this stuff. I mean, there's got to be some of it coming out. But she's like, "Oh, I didn't understand that," and it's like, "How do you know all these things?" And I'm like, "I don't know, years of watching football, maybe."
Absolutely. Yeah. My mom, she grew up a diehard Vikings fan. She used to go to the games at the old Met Stadium in Minnesota. But yeah, she's a big fan. But, if I ever dare to say something like, Mom, they were in like a single high safety look, she's like, did you just say the safety was on drugs? I'm like, no, never mind. It's okay. It's okay, Mom. So I totally get it about the conversations.
Yeah. So Daniel, do you agree? I believe, that everyone knows that I agree that Cam Ward is going to be the number one pick of the Tennessee Titans. I mean, is that on your board too?
Yes, I just hot off the press. I released my top 32 value board today on firstroundmock.com. And, thank you, William. And absolutely, he to me this game's about, the quarterback, and getting the guy in there that can turn the franchise around quickly. And the reason why I think Tennessee is going Cam Ward is because their new general manager comes over from Kansas City. And of course, that's where they have Patrick Mahomes. So I don't think anyone needs to convince him the importance of the quarterback position. So I think it's definitely going to be Cam Ward at number one. And I'm really, looking forward to see what he does there.
Nice. Well, let's get on to some other quarterbacks here. I mean, personally, I have Jalen Milroe number one. I mean, I've never actually graded.
Yeah, I'm on First Round Mock, the website. I'm trying to find the article, but that's why I'm trying to find the article on the homepage for the top 32 because I think it might be a fun read, but I can read it later.
Man.
Thank you. Yeah, it should be right there. It should be the first article on the page. It should be up.
I never actually, graded in a prospect on so much potential as I did on Jalen Milroe. I mean, he is literally, if anybody out there has seen the movie Over the Edge, the Disney movie, it's like Hammy when they give him the energy drink, the little squirrel, and he's just, going around la-da-da and to everyone else. And that's Milroe, man. But tell us what you think about him, Daniel.
Movies. I don't have any time for movies, unfortunately. It sounds like a good
movies,
one.
just Jalen Milroe. I mean,
no, I know, but the movie you were talking about.
oh, yeah, you.
Yeah.
You don't see much else on film. I didn't get the joke there.
No. It reminds me when Joe Gibbs. They asked to be old Redskins coach back in the day. They said something about Oliver North back in the day, when they're having the trial and everything, and Joe Gibbs said, "What position does he play?"
That's every time I read one of your texts, man. It's like, wait, what?
Absolutely. Jalen Milroe is, I may love Jalen Milroe as much as anybody out there. I've looked at him in 34 games over the last 3 years. I have a second-round grade on him. To me, he's kind of like and this is a really, kind of like an old science project, or maybe you get in the kitchen and just take a bunch of ingredients and throw them together. This is a really weird concoction, but to me, he's kind of like a cross between a Lamar Jackson and Anthony Richardson. Now, that's not as flattering as it sounds, because Lamar, is a two-time MVP. Obviously, he gets his flowers. But Anthony Richardson, somebody I had a 5th round grade on coming out of Florida, and I label as a bust before the Colts ever took him. So it's kind of a cross between these two things, like a dichotomy, because to me, he's an athletic dual role guy. He's a game planning headache because he can move around, mature beyond his years. The leadership, he comes from a household of 2 military parents. That's a big deal. Anyone that's listening, for some of the work I've done, and my NFL mentors taught me, Lionel Vitale, who was the college scouting director with the Cowboys, is a lot of these teams talk about, they want to know about family background. Is it a single parent household? What's the parents do? They dig this background. So he comes from a 2 military, family, parents, and that's active military, and that's important because because he can follow structure, he can follow direction, he can he brings that to the table. He's a guy with a strong arm, good deep ball, consistently attacking the field, works the whole field. A tough, patient guy, keeps his eyes downfield, good escapability with that mobility, and some improv. I saw some improv on film, not affected by the scoreboard, but then we, there's two sides to the coin, right? And to me, he was inconsistent going through his progressions. Sometimes he freezes up when he's reading a defense. Average decision making, tends to pat the ball like they all do. Average anticipation, uses more upper body than lower. It almost looks like Jalen Milroe is pushing the ball downfield. And he kind of, uses his upper body to push it, so it has a tendency to sail or be overthrown, and kind of a human slingshot motion, if you will, in a higher release point. So a lot of his passes, some of the passes get overthrown. But here's my big thing with him. I think he's going to have his moments. I think when you look at the QBR and ESPN's page, I think you're probably going to see him between, 20 and 32. He's going to be one of these guys I think sticks around for a rookie contract that will not see a second, extension with the team that drafts him. Because here's the big issue I have with him. Exciting player at times, but the problem I have with Jalen Milroe is his internal clock is broken. It's too slow. His process is very methodical. Like 2 years ago, I think, William, you and I talked about this. He was at 3.45 seconds time to throw at PFF. Now, I was so hoping that Kalen DeBoer was going to come in there and save the day like he did with Michael Penix. And he got that time to throw up to 2.87 this year at PFF. PFF, according to them. But still, the process, it's almost like they had to put jumper cables on to get, Kalen DeBoer and that staff to kind of get him kickstarting going, because he just has such a slow process and he's so methodical back there. So I think that's going to be the thing that kind of, is going to create some issues. But hey, great runner, great, he's a good arm. He can throw it, deep. He can do all those type of things. At one point, I was kind of like, just daydreaming about the possibility of, Cliff Kingsbury and him going to the Giants together and doing something up there. But, the big thing is, I think that the most important thing for Jalen Milroe is I think it's going to be getting a correct valuation. Unmet expectations are the source of all human disappointment. And, a lot of times the unmet expectations are the thing busts are made of. So, if they can accurately value him and bring him in, I feel in the second round is, a good grade for him, in a good round and a good valuation. If he can come in with lower expectations and he can kind of work his way into there, it'll be more favorable for him. But if he comes in there, higher, it's we've seen all these quarterbacks, continue to be bust year after year because the expectations are just over their heads.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a draft much like 2022, where the QB run's either going to begin in round 2 or in round 3. Because I've got Shedeur Sanders as my QB2, but I think he will get overdrafted in the first round. And then I've got Quinn Ewers as my QB3 to the Giants at 65. I've got Jackson Dart at 67 to the Browns 2 picks later, and then Jalen Milroe to the Steelers at 82 or 83 with that second pick after their first round pick. So that's kind of, and I also think Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel go late round 3, very early round 4 to the Dolphins and Raiders. But my 7-round mock will be out tomorrow. But overall, what impressed you about this QB class besides Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe? Because Ewers feels like the guy that we're not talking about enough. A lot of people are overshadowing the receivers that Jackson Dart had. Jackson Dart had some great receivers. Shedeur had some great receivers that made him look better than he is at times. And you could say the same thing about Cam Ward. But when it comes to Texas, people just bring up Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Gunnar Helm, and completely downplay the fact that Ewers did elevate that offense at times. That's the thing I've noticed, Daniel.
Yeah, Chris, absolutely. Same thing with Cam Ward, maintaining a first-round grade on him for 3 years in a row. I've maintained a first-round documented grade on Quinn Ewers for 2 years in a row. And I looked at 27 games and studied 27 of his games extensively. And the thing I love, he's 27-8, comes from a winning record and all that good stuff. He led the 6 highest scoring offenses last year. But the thing I loved about Quinn Ewers, and the thing that really struck me is he's such an instinctual thrower. This is a guy that just seems to have the old, fighters that used to have armor on, like the warriors and all that. And he seems to have just this sixth sense to be able to innately be able to just smell and sense where the greatest area of vulnerabilities are, and vulnerability is in the secondary, and attack that spot. He's unorthodox. This last year, I think people got a little down on him, too down because of the oblique injury. I don't know how you feel about that, Chris and William. But, it's something where, to me, he has an aggressive, competitive spirit to him, unwavering temperament. He's got a high football IQ, I thought. Knack for the big play. He can throw from different arm angles. He can extend plays. Full command of the field, sees the field. And another thing that really struck me is how quickly he can identify the checkdowns and hit the checkdowns on the film. Just a poised, patient, tough guy. And I have him the entire, this happens to me sometimes. I don't know if it happens to you guys, but at times when I'm watching a prospect, just a name of a team will just stick in my head. Does that happen to you guys?
Yes, it does. I can agree 100% on that. That's why I mention it in my articles when I see, these teams come up and start talking like Jalen Milroe and the Steelers. The Steelers want special. Well, Shedeur Sanders isn't special. Milroe has that ceiling to be special. So I can definitely see them. I don't have a first-round grade, or they're all later first-round grades on quarterbacks. It's like Chris said about the 2022 draft when the quarterback run is going to start, and I have my top, well, it's usually my top three, but my top four went Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, and I had almost identical grades on Kyle McCord and Cam Ward. I see that arm angle stuff that you were talking about with Cam Ward previously, that kind of Mahomes stuff. I wouldn't quite say Mahomes because, I see him as, well, we had this conversation, Daniel, before, and we both agreed on it. And it was, we were talking about Cam Ward and we were talking about Jalen Hurts, and that's who I compared him to in my article. It's like sometimes you just see that player and it comes out, and that's why sometimes I have comparisons and why sometimes I don't on my evaluations. I still have two evaluations that have yet to come out, and that's Ewers and McCord. And Ewers, he's a field general. I said that 2 years ago. All these quarterbacks I've been watching for years, they've all been, got the evaluations to back it up, the evidence to back it up.
If you're Pittsburgh at 21 and Sanders and Ward are off the board and the scouts are like, we want to take a quarterback here, who we pick most, there's going to be a split room on Dart, there's going to be a split room on Milroe, but I'm probably going to say take Quinn Ewers here, and I'm going to stand pat on that, like the one judge in 12 Angry Men who got the other judges to rule not guilty in that story and movie. But yeah, that would be what I do. I know you're probably thinking the same thing, viewers, but yeah.
I mean, Ewers should be in that conversation. Like I said, he is my quarterback too, and that's,
he's my QB3 behind Ward and Sanders, but I think it's the gap between Sanders and Ewers is very, very small. I give Sanders a very, very slim edge in that respect. But
Daniel talked about confidence in quarterbacks, and that's where I want to get to with Dart, because the last 2 years I had Dart, just right above. He was touching that almost, whatever you want to call it, mythical first round grade, and I had him in the second or in the third, I think, finally. And in 2024, I just watched him, and he had lost that confidence, that he had lost that arm cockiness that he had, and I had to drop him to the fourth round. I mean, I don't know. It was something that fire, the confidence, it was just gone. And I don't think, the media tries to pump get some ratings and stuff with some of these quarterbacks, and it's so unfair to them. If Dart could just sit there and develop and get that confidence back, he's an NFL quarterback. He's got all the skills in the world, but right now I can't say that. I can say I would draft Tyler Shug over him. I can say I would draft Kyle McCord over him. Well, obviously.
Yeah, I think different people look for different things in quarterbacks. With me, I'm all about the floor, ceiling, where they are right now, what they can become in 5 years, what they can become once they hit their ceiling. Williams, all about confidence and fire. I don't put as much stock into that as I probably should. But looking at Quinn Ewers, I feel like a lot of the reason Ole Miss had success on deep passes was due to Jordan Watkins. He was a wide receiver on Ole Miss, so I did compare he's my Tyreek Hill in this draft. Ole Miss receiver. He's a very good deep threat. He shows flashes of Tyreek Hill, and I think Watkins bailed out Dart on a lot of his deep balls this year. But the scouts aren't going to tell you that because it hurts Dart's ability to get in the first round. Mainstream media is not going to say about that because right now Watkins is a sixth round at UDFA. So they don't want to say anything about that because it would be a detriment to Dart's ability to go on day one.
Yeah. And that's for sure. How do you feel about that, Daniel?
Well, I wish somebody, to your point, Chris, I wish somebody would say something, because it pains me to continue to see these quarterbacks being overdrafted. People say it's hating all the time when I put lower round grades on these guys. To me, I project them based on what they put on film and what I see, and also according to what their conduct is. If any's applicable, anything's out there from credible sources. I just, to me, it'll be a prospect getting overgraded is like the worst thing that can happen to them. Nobody wins from overgrading except for the media with the clicks. It's tough because they come in here with these incredible. We saw it with Caleb Williams this year. He comes in there with these just ridiculous sky high expectations. Talks of Super Bowl from Nick Wright and on Fox Sports, and all these people are saying, like, he comes in, he's 5-12, he's ranked 28th QBR, and all of a sudden he just falls. There's stories out there about how he's crying, after every game. He's, tears on his pillow, because the expectations are just way too high. So I wish, to your point, Chris, somebody would say something that has the platform large enough to say it about Jackson Dart, because to me, he's kind of a cross between somewhere in between, I had a 3rd round pre-draft grade on Zach Wilson before the Jets took him. I had a 5th round pre-draft grade on Kenny Pickett, and to me, he's kind of in between the two of those guys. I have a 3rd round grade on Dart. There's a lot of things that are good about him. I mean, he's fearless. He aggressively attacks the field, downfield, highly competitive, all that good stuff. But he's just, at the end of the day, he's just too darn inconsistent for me. He gives off this he makes me feel very unsettled when I watch him inside my soul. He feels very disorganized, discombobulated, just pervasive, just undisciplined feeling I get from him. An eccentric. I compare him to Gardner Minshew. That's my comp for him.
That's an interesting comp, because I'm looking at my board. I've got Cam Ward at 7, Shadur Sanders at like 56. I've got Quinn Ewers at 65. I've got Dart at 69. I've got Milrow at like 81 or something, somewhere in the 80s. But I just look at Dart, and I think I get Pickett vibes. I get Kenny Pickett vibes. If he goes to Pittsburgh, that is going to be Kenny Pickett all over again at 21. If he goes to Pittsburgh at 21, that's going to be Kenny Pickett all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing that troubles me most about Jackson Dart, and it's spray painted. It's not like you have to go looking for it. It's spray painted all over his game film. It's concerned because he was just I felt too uncomfortable in the pocket. I didn't like his pocket presence. I didn't like the mistakes he made under pressure. I didn't like the fact that he just seemed to be mostly a one-read quarterback, and it made a lot of predetermined throws. That is not the way that works in the National Football League. Inconsistent tempo. He's like a drummer playing at different speeds. A guy who relies, another one of those guys like they talk with Milrow, relying more on his upper body than his lower body, the set from his base and his platform. And I just felt like, and the ball security. Ball security was a huge issue to me. I chart PBUs, pass breakups, when I watch these guys. I chicken scratch them in my notes. 32 PBUs in 13 games, 2.46 average. And he just, he doesn't really do a good job of protecting himself either when he was running the football. So I feel like he's a higher injury risk as well. I don't know. To me, it just feels like, some teams going to try to force him to be the starter, Chris and William, whether it be whoever it may be, is going to force him in that role. But he's just the inconsistencies, it's going to be those team meetings, those coaching meetings, those scouting meetings, where they're just like, it's just like, those meetings where they're just like, he just gets sent back to the bench. I don't see him getting a second contract with the team that drafts him. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Unless he goes to a team with a really good coordinator, I can't see him reaching his ceiling. He does have a high ceiling, but he also has a very low floor. And I think he would have to go to a team with a really good offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach to become the player people think he can become, assuming he reaches his ceiling. I don't think it's in the cards for him.
Yeah, and
I don't either.
Just what you're talking about, man. This last year, I've been talking so much about them getting a great quarterback coach and a great young coordinator to help them succeed. I mean, there are some absolute minds out there. There's Josh McCown, there's a few of them. There's these ones that worked with him before, like Jordan Palmer, that worked with Kyle McCord. You know, he's worked with Patrick Mahomes. He's worked with Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, you know, Sam Darnold, and some of these guys, you know, to get a quarterback coach to keep some of these guys in line, that's something that Jalen Milroe knows. And I think that is one problem with Jalen Milroe is he just says, oh, well, you know, I can run around for a second, and he just relies too much on his legs, you know, and setting his feet when he throws, you know, that's the big knock that I have on him. And, you know, just getting in too much of a hurry, doing what he's doing. And
yeah, I would argue that the Saints probably have the best coaching staff of the QB needy teams after the Titans, who are going to get the best QB in Cam Ward. Kellen Moore, Doug Nussmeier is the offensive coordinator, and they have Scott Tolzien, the former Wisconsin quarterback, as their quarterback's coach. That's probably I'm looking at the Steelers QB coach. I know they have Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator. He was a good offensive coordinator in Tennessee, but he's a bad head coach in Atlanta. He was an upgrade over the guy that Pittsburgh fired. The other, I forget his name. He was so bad. The coordinator for Pittsburgh before Arthur Smith came in. But yeah, I'm looking at. I think it was So it was.
You got me by the tongue, man.
I'm just because they fired They fired someone else before Arthur Smith who was just horrible.
Oh man, his name is on the tip of my tongue.
I know. He's just bad. Like
anyway,
because Gailey or something.
Yeah, I don't know what the Steelers have been doing over there since about 2022. It's been a mystery to me because that's a flagship.
Matt Canada, that's who it is.
There, yeah. There we go. But it's a mystery to me what's going on over there because to me it's like they shared the same practice facility, right, as Pitt, or pretty close nearby there. The University of Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, because it's connected there.
Right. So to me, when I turned on the film of like Kenny Pickett, I never understood that pick. I mean, it was like
they sat there and watched him that long.
Yeah. I watched like 4 games off like YouTube, and I put a 5th round grade on him. And it's like they saw him every day in practice in college, and then brought him over there, and it just I think they're really going to regret letting Justin Fields walk. I think they're in a real quandary right now, and I don't know what they're going to do. They're kind of a no man's land sitting there at 21.
I saw that Reese's Senior Bowl with Kenny Pickett, and it was raining out there, and he was fighting with his gloves, and I'm like, oh no, there's his small hands, man. It's like, come on, man. It's like 10 1/4. Come on, hurry up. Grow a little bit, dude.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they do in the combine. There's been some mysterious growth going on guys' arms, and all sorts of things.
Well, yeah, that was like Pickett. He was doing these thumb stretches because the tip of his thumb just wasn't. It was kind of bent in, and it's like, okay, man, at least I don't know, but anyway, that hit me up. But we talked about all the quarterbacks. I mean, any final thoughts on this draft class, there, Daniel?
Yeah, as far as the quarterbacks are concerned, I mean, we're pretty close on a lot of things. It sounds like we're talking. It could be off a little bit here and there. I mean, I'm way different on Shedeur Sanders. It's out there. I have him as an undraftable free agent, value in this draft.
Yeah, we have a little bit of what Shedeur Sanders people writing about you and your opinions on him and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's actually great to see you getting that kind of play, man. I mean, but
appreciate that. Well, it's just the reason is just like I can't, every year I sit back and watch this. 2021 I had an undraftable free agent grade on Trey Lance, and they made a amount of a molehill on him. Zach Wilson, they threw him into the fire. 1st round pick, I said, I put a 3rd round grade on. They these quarterbacks, Kenny Pickett and Anthony Richardson, they do it every single year. Caleb Williams, and the list goes on. Every year they do this, and in Shedeur, I mean, it's just. I've never in my life seen a quarterback more afraid to throw the ball than Shedeur Sanders standing back there. I mean, that's why he has the slowest time to throw in the draft class, 3 seconds. to me, it's just like, it's just he dropped back. I mean, this entire game film can be summarized by he drops back against a very middling schedule. He hasn't played anybody in college. The highest team he played was number 17 BYU, and he was running for his life against BYU. But he drops back, he looks. I mean, Pat Shermer did a great job of building a system that could be absolutely manipulate things to get his stats padded, to get him in position in the first round, because he drops back, he looks. He's looking for a zone, zone coverage, off man. He's waiting for receivers. You can see the hitch in his throw. He's waiting. He's got Travis Hunter, who's probably going to become the best receiver in the National Football League, as a wide receiver working against these guys who don't have a prayer making into the NFL, as defensive backs. And, he's just a lot of short dump off passes. And if he couldn't find a receiver open, he'd scramble around behind the line of scrimmage until somebody uncovered, and then he would throw it to him. Or he would basically just, take a sack, the most sacked quarterback in the FBS over the last 2 years, 94 sacks. He wouldn't throw it away, and he has like 54 PBUs I charted the last 2 years and 13 interceptions. I think he's an absolute organizational disaster waiting to happen. I think whoever gets him, if they take him tomorrow, they might as well start cleaning out their office. I think they're firing themselves effectively tomorrow if they take him. I mean, to me, he's the second most overrated quarterback I've seen since Trey Lance. I mean, I could go on and on about him, but, it's just, I don't know. I know some people really like him. I respect the work you do, Chris. I know a lot of these people, they just build a narrative around 2-3 highlights and call it a day. But I'd be interested to hear some of your thoughts on Shedeur Sanders, because, that's not even touching on the character concerns. He's got more character red flags than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And also he's coming off a fractured back in 2023 that no one's really talking about. And from what he says on his video, on his video show, his podcast, is he's going to continue to flex his watch in the NFL. Good luck, buddy. Good luck. As what I say to him is he's going to go in there and start flexing. Everyone's got Rolexes in the NFL. And he's going to start flexing the watch and everything. I think they're going to hit the daylights out of him. He doesn't have the speed. They're going to come after him. I can't even imagine how ugly it's going to be. I don't know if I can even watch if he were to play the Eagles.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I mean, I think Shedeur's probably going to end up going. I mocked him the Jets because they can get out Justin Fields' contract after this season, but I just think that'd be a horrible decision by the Jets. I mean, that would be a horrible business decision. But I'm looking at the what can Shedeur Sanders bring to an organization outside of the accuracy, the arm talent, and
there's no one to second that arm talent, man. I mean, that is one thing I can definitely say about him.
One scout said he is the most arrogant QB he's ever interviewed. Like a former head coach or an assistant head coach said he was one of the most arrogant QBs he's ever interviewed. And everybody's making a big deal about that.
Yeah. And, I like cocky, but, I mean, in my world of words, there's a little bit of cocky, a little bit of arrogance is okay. I love that in a quarterback. But as soon as they start getting, just that complete arrogant to like where, no one's better than them kind of attitude, cocky's one thing, I kind of figure that kind of midline between normal and arrogant, And like I said, man, it doesn't work out because that was Jimmy Clausen. He came in, dude. Had a golden arm, had everything to back him up, but he wasn't a leader. No one wanted to follow him. And, Mel Kiper making comments on our boy Candy here. He he said he would retire, and then he's going in on yeah, no, man. Come on. But yeah, that was funny when you sent that to me, Daniel. But yeah. But
that's the thing. Like, someone in the chat room went, "Whose arrogance is worse? Is it Shedeur Sanders or Josh Rosen?" Josh Rosen had philanthropy arrogance, entrepreneur arrogance, whereas Shedeur, I would argue, has self-entitlement arrogance. And I would argue
Absolutely.
self-entitlement arrogance is a lot worse than entrepreneurial arrogance, because you could argue that entrepreneurial arrogance is just very high standards when it comes to philanthropy or business or whatever you're choosing to do with your entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I definitely agree on there's different kinds when it comes to it, you know, and there's mature arrogance and there's, you know, immature arrogance, and it just a whole different range. But, you know, I mean, I don't know, man. It can bring either spice to a locker room, or it can either, you know, kill it. And what were you going to say, Daniel?
To me, Shedeur Sanders, I mean, I can talk, you know, for a long time about, you know, his throwing mechanics and his time to throw and how much he's sacked and how much he doesn't want to throw the ball away. You know, he'd rather take sacks and yardage losses for his team. And, you know, I can talk about how, you know, over 1,600 of his yards plus were yak. You know, that really cuts down on that 41-34 passing total. You know, I could talk about how he's, you know, top 25, you know, screen percentage in college football. You know, the slow time to throw, the slowest time in this draft class at 3 seconds. You know, 13 character concerns that I've posted. You know, video concerns where he's poking guys in the eyes. He's getting the face of a ball boy. He's doing all these kind of things. And that's really what this leads into what I was going to say, because to me, you know, we can talk about Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback, but to me, it's like quarterback means leadership. It means this is the face of the franchise. And to me, he's an immature, passive aggressive hothead with violent tendencies. He's somebody that reminds me, you know, he gives me serious Cardonius Tony vibes. I talked about Cardonius Tony at length. I took a lot of heat on Tony before he's coming out of Florida, the receiver. You know, I said there was a lot of red flags on Tony. This guy has a lot more red flags. I mean, this is somebody, like I said, who literally poked a Colorado State defensive player with his hands on his hips in the eyes. This is somebody who shoved one of his teammates in a game and just like, get out of here, and just shoved him. This is a guy that, you know, got into a face of a ball boy. This is a guy who shoved a referee during a game and proceeded to get into the ref's face 3 different times after that. It goes all the way back to high school. I pulled footage of his high school days, and he was like, you know, they were beeping out every other word he was saying to refs back in high school. This guy has an immense disrespect for referees. He feels like entitled, to your point, Chris. So you talked about, you know, being entitled. He's somebody that I feel, you know, is getting more and more aggressive on his timeline, physically aggressive on his timeline. Nobody's checked it. And now he's even getting into a face of a ball boy. I wasn't able to find out through research if the guy was a minor or not, which might even make it worse. But he's out of control, and he's got that entourage. His brother's pushing the ball boy, Deion Sanders Jr. He's got this whole thing going on. And believe you and me, with Deion Sanders has got the media in his back pocket, and every single, you know, anything that doesn't sit well with Shedeur, he's going to be talking about playing armchair coach until he gets that head coaching job. You know, I think it's just a disaster waiting to happen. I really do.
And he had multiple opportunities to validate why he should be the second QB picked after Ward, but it just feels like he didn't seize any of them. He had the game against Nebraska early in the year in September. That was brutal. He had the game against Kansas in Arrowhead Stadium, only NFL stadium he played in all year. He was brutal in that game. I thought he was okay in the Kansas State loss, but he had a third opportunity in the BYU bowl game, which he played in. He was awful in that. And he had a fourth opportunity at the East-West Shrine Bowl if he had chose to compete in the game, but he just went there to interview with teams. He didn't even practice. So he had 4 different opportunities to validate why he should have been QB2 or why he should have been the de facto challenger to Cam Ward. And he didn't really validate any of those opportunities this year.
Great points, Chris. That's the thing, too, to piggyback off that, Chris. That's the thing is this guy, Shedeur Sanders, shrinks down from higher level competition every single chance he gets, to your point. And he looks smaller in some of these games against better teams. He starts out slow. He looks more tentative. He looks hesitant. I mean, this goes all the way back. I mean, you know, Deion's been protecting him and sheltering him from the time he was in high school as his offensive coordinator when he went to that private high school down at Trinity Christian. And then he had offers on the table, according to 24/7 Sports, sports to go into a bigger program. There's a number of them, I think Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, different scholarship offers. He shies away from that and still follows his dad to Jackson State, plays FCS ball down there. Still, I mean, people say Colorado's offensive line is the reason why he had 94 sacks. He was sacked 58 times down in Jackson State. This is a problem, and then he, comes into Colorado and he's 1-7 against top 25 teams. People say, oh, wow, look at him against North Dakota State, which I felt was his best game of the season. But that's an FCS school and they're it's Colorado. So, and then to your point, Chris, he had a chance at first
they
of all,
barely won that North Dakota State game.
Exactly. Exactly. And I felt like, okay, why is this guy not going to the Senior Bowl? Okay, then I found out that he wanted to take a bunch of his receivers to the East-West game, and I felt like it was a little bit political. But
Nagy wouldn't budge on that, and Galco did. That's why he went to the Shrine Bowl.
Okay, fair enough. And then he shows up at the Combine. He refuses to work out there like so many of them do, and then he sits there at his I didn't like his pro day.
Combine was the fifth opportunity, to be honest. The Combine was the fifth blown opportunity by Sanders. He did do better than Cam Ward at his pro day from a completion percentage standpoint, but not from an overall throws standpoint. 65 for 68, I think, at his pro day. Cam Ward was 79 for 90, but Ward showed more work ethic at the pro day. Shadur, because some of these QBs, they'll do 70, 80 snaps at their pro days. Shadur only did 68. It feels a little bit lower than you'd like, but he did a good job completing the pass. And on the 5 incompletions he had, 3 were overthrown, 2 hit the ground. I think he was 63 for 68. But
here's the problem that I have. If anybody wants to know why preseason I compared Shadur Sanders to Bronny James, Deion Sanders has been on his coaching staff on every team since high school. Right. He was his OC in high school, and Deion comes out and says, "Oh yeah, if you can't win with him, it's a coaching problem." Well,
that's gonna be the thing.
Come on, man. I mean, this kid has obviously shown everything that you said. I have a 5th round grade on him, and I'm not sure it should even be that high. Just that attitude that you're talking about, I watched that Colorado State game, I saw that whole thing. I saw him pushing around the ball boys, and that's what I wondered, if that kid was, like 17 years old or whatever, if he was a minor, and they're over there, working on him because they're frustrated with something. I definitely, if Shadur's last name wasn't Sanders, we wouldn't even be talking about him. Put him that way. North Dakota State, their quarterback, Cam Miller, this last year, that kid has heart. I saw him play. He has heart.
Yeah, he struck me as.
I don't see that in Shadur, and I believe it's all about heart. If whatever I'm quoting Gene Hackman off of The Replacements, I said it before that. One of my favorite players of all time and number 1 receiver of all time was Steve Smith, and just watching him tear up the damn field. That's what I love, and that's why you see these players come out every once in a while. Cam Scatabo, he comes out and the dude is just pure, just driving force, and I don't see that you can really beat that when it comes down to it. I want to see all that, and that's what it comes when I see a football player. I want to know who he is, and like I mentioned with Jackson Dart, that the things that he lost that confidence. I watched the whole thing, and it's like, because, and I was excited to get started on his evaluation, and then I saw a few of the games this year, and I'm like, oh no, starting on his final. And I'm like, guys, Houston, we have a problem here, and it's like, can we, please find this guy's confidence or whatever happened to him? But, I'm not sure where Chris ran off to, but I was going to ask him a question or two. But, wrapping this up, what kind of final thoughts you got, Chris?
I think it's going to be an exciting NFL draft tomorrow, Wednesday, tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. Well, I'll set up the live stream with the thumbnail William sent me earlier. That's going to be for 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Friday, and then noon on Saturday for day 3 coverage. But yeah, we're going to have William, we're going to have Joey on. Mary, the Mac and Cheese podcast is coming on. I did get a phone call from Oren, who's done the Utopia Football Insider show with me while I was recording this interview, but I'll get back to him after the show, after this show ends, see what he wants to do for the draft tomorrow, because I don't know how many people we're going to have on the stream. If we have at least 4 minimum, if we include Mary, who's coming on as a guest at 8 Thursday, 9 Friday, and 3 Saturday. And the reason I said 8 Thursday is because A, it's the beginning of the draft, and B, we pretty much know who the first 4 picks are going to be. The question is, are they going to drag this thing out till 8:30, 8:40, or the pick's going to come in boom, 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 and then we're on the 5th pick by 8:40, maybe 8:50. I'm hoping they drag it out quickly, but like if they don't and they wait till the last minute, we might not be on the 5th pick until 8:40 or 8:50.
All right. So, hey, Daniel, I mentioned the Mel Kiper thing and him saying that your thoughts on Shedeur is just an opinion. What would you say to that?
Well, it was an honor to be mentioned, for me by Mel Kiper. I mean, that's a guy I've been watching since I was, knee high to,
a grasshopper.
That's probably how Mel Kiper felt when the Colts GM in 1994 said, "Who the hell is Mel Kiper?"
You remember that. That's a good tie-in. I wasn't offended by it. I've done the work on Shedeur. He apparently disagreed with what I had to say. There was parts of it where he came back and, throughout the, course of his talk, where he kind of came around and said, okay, maybe you don't see like first round mock, maybe you don't see him this way. So, it's fine. I just, I really felt, blessed that he responded to what I had to say and everything. But, this is more than an opinion. It's I have pages and pages and pages and pages of notes on this stuff. It's a calculated, very calculated, whatever you want to call it. So it was just cool that he responded to it, I felt, and it was just a neat thing. But yeah, absolutely, Chris. That's probably how I felt with that, for sure.
Well, guys, I'd like to thank you all for joining tonight, and I guess we'll end the show at that.
Yep.
And
see you guys tomorrow for day 1 of the draft.
For sure. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, William and Chris.
Enjoy the draft, Daniel.
Yeah, you too. You guys too. Enjoy. It's like Christmas. It'll be a fun day for everybody.
Agreed.
It's Christmas and the New Year's, man, all in one weekend.
then comes the draft hangover after that. Where it's
Christmas, New Year's, and my birthday are like 2-3 weeks apart from each other, and I enjoyed these 3 days more than that 3-week period. So what should that tell you?
Yeah, that's pretty.
I love it, man. I love it. All right.